Stargirl, episode 3, still in summer school. We will call this episode the Thunderbolt. So this episode takes us back about 11 years, 2010, where, yeah, right, like 2010, like I thought the JSA was around in the 40s, but, you know, like 2010, and we see pictures of like, you know, like old newspaper clippings and like old articles of Stripesy and Starman. Back when he was a young lad, he was the Star-Spangled Kid, and I thought it was funny because they were showing us photos that took place throughout the course of history until from when Starman was a boy, then he became a grown man. Pat was in all the photos, and Pat looked exactly the same in every in every single photo. They did show a photo of like the JSA together. We saw Jay Garrick in the middle. We saw both Hawks. You know, we saw the Green Lantern. So that was actually a pretty dope photo to see. You know, but then we get a little conversation of like, you know, because Pat he was at the JSA headquarters and he was working on the car, and this actually takes place during the final battle before the ISA actually kills the JSA. And then another member of the JSA, his name was John, I believe. He comes downstairs. He's talking to Pat because it's around Christmas time. While he and Pat are having a conversation, he's basically saying how like he feels like one of the most worthless members of the JSA, and he feels alone because, you know, they put him on the bench, and the power that he has would be better served in someone else's hands because he has a pink pen. And the pink pen contains, we'll just call it a genie. It contains a genie that is referred to as the Thunderbolt. You know, like when you make a wish, it comes out, and then he grants wishes. But a la Wonder Woman 1984, it has the monkey paw effect where you can ask for something, but you have to be very specific about what you ask for because the genie, the Thunderbolt genie, he's very specific when it comes to these wishes. Then Wildcat comes in. He's like, hey, we got to take on the ISA because now they got Solomon Grundy and we need John and Thunderbolt's help. And they tell Pat Dugan, sit your sidekick ass behind. And then we know what happens. They end up having the battle. Everybody gets killed. And then Pat shows up, you know, like to basically try to rescue Starman before Starman eventually dies. And then, you know, like that's how Pat ends up becoming like the sole survivor of the JSA, but they did say that he wasn't an official member. He was just a sidekick. So now like fast forward, you know, into like present day, it shows us Pat's son, and, you know, he's still doing his paper route. Mike is still doing his paper route. And, you know, he runs into some bullies, and while he runs into some bullies, he gets his ass beat. And then while he gets beat up on the paper route, you know, he ends up going home. While he's home, Courtney and Pat and, you know, the mom, they're all having a conversation about what to do next as far as the Shade is concerned. You know, they're just like, oh, what's the plan of attack? Like, how are we going to go about it? Are you going to bring the robot? And then Pat's just like, listen, we don't know a lot about it yet, but until we get some information, until we can come up with a feasible plan that everybody, you know, can agree on, we're not going to make a move on the Shade as of yet. So then, you know, Mike comes home looking all beat up and torn up. Nobody notices. Nobody pays attention. You know, he was just like, oh, is this JSA business? Can I be a part of it? And they're like, no, go deliver your paper. And then he gets upset. While he goes off, he's delivering his papers, and then, well, he goes upstairs, like, I guess like his boss called him to tell him what his next paper route was. He tried to write it down, and the pen that he was using, coincidentally, had no ink in it. So he goes in Courtney's room, and he takes the pink pen, and he writes down the information, and he goes on the paper route. While he's on the paper route, he ends up seeing, he ended up making a wish. And when he made a wish, I forgot what he wished for. He was like something like he wishes he was cool, or he wished he was a superhero, or something like that. He made some sort of wish. And then the pen woke up, and the pen spoke to him, and he was just like, oh, you have to say the magic words. For some reason, the magic words are so cool. And then when he said the magic words, like the so cool genie popped out of the pen. He told Mike, he was like, oh, I'm a member of the JSA. I grant wishes. But he was just like, there are some rules. Obviously, you can't kill anybody. You can't bring anybody back from the dead. And you can't make the same wish twice, which means you can make the same wish twice. You just have to word it differently, because he was very specific about you being very specific about the types of wishes that you make. So then, you know, so he was just like, okay, let's test out the wish thing. He was like, you know, I'm thirsty. I wish I had water. And when he said he wished he had water, the genie, like the so cool genie, dropped a bunch of water on top of his head. And then he was like, I meant to say I wanted water in a glass, but he was just like, oh, he was like, you got to be specific. And now you can't make the same wish again. But I'm like, but if he says, hey, can I have water in a glass? That's not the same wish. That's a different wish. But anyway, so, and then as he's walking around, the same bullies that beat him up earlier in the episode, they were picking on a little girl who was just selling Girl Scout cookies. And they ended up like stealing Girl Scout cookies from her. And then Mike told the genie, he was like, yo, I wish they would stop. And then when he did that, a stop sign fell in front of the bully, in front of one of the bullies. The bullies tried to walk to the left, and then another stop sign fell, and then another stop sign fell. And then after a while, Mike was just like, yo, you know, easy with the stop signs, like, yo, chill with the stop signs. And then the genie said, I can't stop until they do, because your wish was you wish for them to stop and they keep moving. You know, and then, you know, so like while that whole thing was going on, Courtney and Yolanda, they were on their way home from school because the two of them were having conversations. Yolanda's still affected over the fact that, you know, she killed Brainwave in the last, you know, like in the last season, and like the trauma from that is still bothering her, to the point where she's talking to Courtney and she's like, listen, if we do take down this Shade character, we have to arrest him and bring him to the proper authorities, because she was like, I don't want to kill anybody. She's like, I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to have what happened last season to happen again. So she was just like, yo, we got to be real cool. We got to be real clear on that, because I'm not doing this if we're going to go around killing people. And then they end up seeing the stop signs, end up seeing the whole ordeal. They bump into Mike. They see that Mike has the pen. Pat loses his shit because Pat was just like, yo, how did you get your hands on the pen? Why didn't you tell me that you had the pen to begin with? And she was like, I forgot. And he was like, well, how did Mike get it? And then he told Mike, he was like, listen, you got to give back the pen. But then, you know, Be Cool was just like, nah. Well, So Cool. I was calling Be Cool. So Cool was just like, nah. He was like, yo, you can't have it. He's like, you know, Mike, he said Mike made the wish. Mike is the full owner of the pen, and he and I are a team now. So now Mike's whole thing is like, yeah, Dad, I want to join the JSA. And then, he, you know, Pat was like, no. And then, you know, the entire team basically came together and voted that Mike should join the JSA. Not because they actually like Mike or want Mike to join the JSA, but because Mike controls Thunderbolt, because he can, you know, because he controls the genie, they said we can use him to find the Shade. So then Pat, because he got outvoted, Pat agreed, and he was just like, okay, fine. He said, but all you're going to do is help us find him, and we're going to be as safe as possible. While that was going on, Barbara was basically trying to do some inventory, because she was trying to figure out what the Shade was actually looking for. And then this mother effer, like, he just popped into the vault that had all the archives in it, scared the mess out of Barbara. And then while the two of them were walking around, he ended up finding a black box. And then he said to her, he was just like, hey, it's an empty black box. Might I have it? And then she was just like, no. She was like, you can't take evidence out of this room. She was like, everything has to be archived, even if it's an empty box. And then he was just like, hey, I thought you'd be more cooperative. And then he used his shade smoke to like disappear. And then now Barbara's just like, yo, you know, like, this is the guy we're looking for. So she goes and tells Pat. So now the new JSA, they're sitting here trying to find this dude, and they all come up with an idea. They all come up with a plan. In order to use Thunderbolt to find Shade, they had to be very, very, very specific with what they were asking for. So they all come up with a way to word it where it wouldn't backfire on them. So when they do that, you know, it was one of those things where he was just like, we're looking for the villain, for the former ISA villain known as the Shade, not to be confused with a cloud on a sunny day or something like that. Like they was like, we're looking for his location in Blue Valley, USA, Nebraska, zip code 20. And I was just like, it doesn't get any more specific than that. And then, you know, like he located, and then like he told them the exact location. The Shade was actually hiding out in the former magician's house, because, you know, the guy whose son died, and then like later on, like, you know, like the parents died, he was hiding in his house. So then, you know, like the whole team goes down there, and they're trying to, you know, like, they're going to take on the Shade, and they're going to bring him to justice. While they're doing that, Pat has a conversation with Thunderbolt, and he's just like, you know, why did you choose my son? And then he told him, he said, you know, like, but right before John died, right before the Injustice Society killed John, he made one last wish, and his wish was for me to find somebody just like me. John said that he was very, you know, John was very lonely. You know, Thunderbolt said that he was very lonely, and he said that the reason why I latched on to your kid is because he's feeling lonely as well. And then that's when, you know, like Pat felt bad, because he knows that he's the reason why his son feels the way that he feels. But then he told his son, he was like, yo, stay in the garage, and if we need you, we'll call you, but we're going down to go speak to the Shade. So the kids go down there, you know, Pat goes down there, they go and talk to the Shade, and the Shade being Shade, throwing shade, you know, like throwing shade at all the kids and everything. Like, that was funny. He sat them down, and he said that, listen, he was like, I have no plans to destroy Blue Valley. He was like, I don't want to destroy your pitiful town. He's like, but I do have business here, and once I conclude my business, I'll leave. And they were just like, well, what's your business? And then he was just like, oh, not to be coy or rude, but he's like, but I won't tell you my business. But then he was just like, you know, but I pose no threat to the people of your city and your town and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, you know, Pat's son, like Mike, wanting to be a member of the team, wanting to be a part of the team, he ignores Pat's orders. He goes running down to the Shade's house. He busts through the door, And then, because at that point, like Courtney and the gang, they kind of like backed off a little bit, and they were I think they were actually just gonna like leave him be. But then, when Mike busted in the room, he had a piece of paper. He was like, I would like you to blast the villain known as the Shade, not to be confused, with like this or that. And then, like Thunderbolt, like he threw a thunder blast at the Shade, but Shade used his Shade power, his magical smoke power. He ended up stopping the Thunderbolt. So I'm just like, the Shade is that powerful to the point where he can stop the genie in a magic pen. And then he took out Stargirl, he took out Beth, he took out Yolanda, he took out Our Man. He had everybody pinned up against the wall. Beth was upset because she was just like, oh, you killed Dr. Mid-Nite. And then he was just like, young lady, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I don't think Dr. Mid-Nite is dead. I think the Shade like sucked him up into, I think like there's like a Shade, like we'll just call it like a Shade dark universe, or like we'll call it the Shadow Realm. Like there's like some sort of like Shadow Realm or something. And I think that's where we'll find out that's where Dr. Mid-Nite really is, like somewhere in some Shadow Realm that he sucks people into. Because at some point during the season, the Shade is gonna suck somebody up into that Shadow Realm, and then that's when they're gonna find the original Dr. Mid-Nite. So then, like after that, he was like, I told you. He was like, I told you to get out of my face, otherwise I'll kill you all. And then he disappeared, and then he left everybody standing. So now they all feel stupid because they're just like, yo, I don't know how we supposed to beat this person because his powers are actually like really, really good. So they have some things they got to come up with, because like I said, because they need to figure out how they're going to actually defeat the Shade. And then, then after that, then like Barbara and Pat, they were talking to Courtney and Mike, and then they're just like, oh, you can't be going out there fighting crime. And then, Courtney was just like, oh, take it easy on Mike. And then Mike was like, nah, they're right. He was just like, I shouldn't have did it. He's like, I got overzealous, and he's like, and I messed up. And then he said, I wish this pen was in the hands of someone who deserves it. And then when he realized what he said, it was too late, because the pen had disappeared. And then Mike was just like, well, there goes your no more JSA for you, because he doesn't have the pen anymore. And the pen went to somebody else. And this was interesting because the pen ended up in the hands of a black kid, and it was like some a video game nerd as well. Like, but the only thing I thought that was weird, it's like, okay, I get it. The pen is pink. The Thunderbolt is pink. I get that whole thing. But it's just too coincidental that the kid that ended up with the pen ended up having on like this gigantic pink hoodie. Because I was just like, okay, y'all ODing with the I was like, y'all ODing with the pink thing. It's like, we get it. But then and then the funny thing about this kid, because he was on his computer playing video games, and then his sister, and his ghetto ass sister came in, and she was like, Mom said to bring your behind downstairs, otherwise like you gonna get in trouble. And then he was just like, oh, he's like, but I'm playing this video game and I'm about to get the high score. She's like, the high score for what? Playing with yourself. And the funny thing about the whole scene is the dynamic, the way she was acting, the dynamic between her and the kid, Virgil Hawkins and Sharon Hawkins on Static Shock. It reminded me exactly like the two of them, like the dynamic that the two of them have. I for a second there, I thought that was if they do if and when they do a live action Static TV series or a movie, that girl needs to play his sister, because that shit was crazy. So then there's like, she flat out called her brother. She's like, yo, you're a loser. And he was just like, yeah, I am a loser. And then the pen just magically appeared. And then he was like, what the heck is this? And he was just like, kid, you and I are about to become best friends. And Mike's wish actually worked, because that kid, like, they treated that kid like straight up trash. So the pen is going to go into the hands of someone that needs it more, like someone quote unquote more deserving. And we'll see what the kid does with it, because obviously he's going to join the JSA at some point, and like I said, he's already got the hoodie. So, like he'll fit right in. So we got this new black kid now, and then we got Green Lantern's daughter flying around somewhere because she's looking for her brother. So like I said, they're slowly building a team, like a new team, an extension team that will come in and save the day in the final battle with the Shade. And then in the end, Beth was talking to Rick, and then Beth was talking about how she's upset about, her parents getting a divorce, and she's upset about losing Chuck, and blah, blah, blah. And then, Chuck came online for like 3 seconds, and then he was just like, oh, be afraid because somebody's coming. I forgot the name they used, but they said that someone's coming, like this villain is coming. And then, Beth was like, who's that? And then, your man, the Shade, he was on top of a building. And he had something that Pat called the Black Diamond, or like the Dark Diamond. So Pat knows that something scary is on the way if the Shade really has his hands on this dark diamond thing. And Chuck just tried to warn Beth that someone's coming as well, and then we still don't know what the hell Cindy doing, because Cindy still has that crystal. So you got the pen, you got the crystal, you got this black smoke thing, you got the Green Lantern. A lot of magic going on in season 2 of Stargirl. So we'll see what happens as things progress going forward. So thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think so far. Let me know what you think about like the slow build of the team, and where's Starman. Like, I thought Starman was on his way to Blue Valley. He ain't show up yet. So Starman, he'll obviously show up pretty soon. Still waiting for the Jay Garrick episode. Would love to see the Jay Garrick episode. Like I said, and see how things progress going forward. Definitely don't have any beef with the show so far. So like I said, I'm just kind of interested. I just want to see, like, I want to see when Cindy starts the recruiting mission to bring in, to form the new ISA, because the Artemis is definitely going to be #1 on that list. So like I said, so share your thoughts, down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of Stargirl so far. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know what you think about the Thunderbolt, and where things will progress going forward. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Instagram. Hit the notification bell, because, like, again, I'm doing a whole lot of videos, both DC and Marvel, so we can talk about it, and you will get notified when those videos go up live. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, I wish we had more Stargirl, but until next week, take care, and I'm out this